Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Artemis. Artemis is a hyper carry in SMITE and is seen exclusively in the ADC role. Artemis lacks any movement abilities but makes up for it by not only hitting extremely hard, but also having a smattering of CC on top of that. Build-wise, Artemis goes a pretty typical fare. You can go the crit route, but this attack speed penetration build is most effective on her, especially given her great synergy with the item Silver Branch Bow. Relics wise, it's the classic beads and ages for Artemis as again, no movement abilities to speak of, so she suffers greatly without these two relics. I also mentioned however that she has a lot of damage in CC to make up for that, so let's get into her passive, which complements both. When Artemis basic attacks any enemy that is being afflicted by any form of crowd control from any source, her basic attacks will deal 15% bonus damage to gods and 30% bonus damage to minions. Keep in mind that if they have any sort of immunity active against CC, from something like a slow immunity from an ability to using their beads, they won't be affected by the passive. This of course makes no sense if you haven't seen Artemis' abilities yet, so let's hop into it with her first ability. Artemis places down a trap. These traps will never disappear unless you exceed the maximum amount of traps available at one time, which is up to 3 traps. These traps work exactly how you think they do. They aren't affected by minions, are easy for your allies to see but tricky for the enemy to see if placed well, and if an enemy walks into it, they are rooted as well as crippled for a whole 2 seconds, and regardless if they take the full root or not, due to DR, the trap will deal large damage over time. Essentially, good use of this ability in lane boils down to you reading your opponents. Every player has one part of the side of the lane they prefer, so read what they like to do, and boom, place a trap there. You want to be placing traps whenever you can, even when you overwrite traps you've already placed. A lot like AMC hives in that regard. You do, however, want to keep one trap in the choke point here in the duo lane. This means that the jungler, if they intend to gank you, has to go around it and come out further away from you than they'd otherwise want to. And of course, if you're being pushed back, which does tend to happen as Artemis, place one trap in the closest jungler entrance to you. I'll keep on talking about the traps as we go, since it actually combos with her other abilities. But for now, Artemis' second ability. Artemis becomes immune to slows, gains a huge amount of attack speed, and gains a flat 25% movement speed. And okay, I don't usually get bogged down by numbers in these guides, but that attack speed stim is 80 actual real life percent. Goodness! Last time around, I said Amazon Cobb's stim was the best in the game, and since it literally lasts forever as long as you have a hive, I'll stand by that. But in terms of pure numbers, nobody, and I mean nobody, comes even close to Artemis with this stim. One of Artemis' skins sees her swapping from a bow and arrow to an assault rifle upon activating this ability, and I can't think of a better metaphor. But I hear you ask, what's the catch? Well, while Artemis' crowd control, especially in her ultimate, is fearsome, her damage outside of basic attacks is quite weak. So if she mistimes this ability or gets disarmed by say a Bellona, or just as bad gets an upgraded shell put against her after popping this ability, she can be practically useless if she doesn't mow everyone down while she has this ability active. So really, using Artemis well in teamfights comes down to perfect timing of this ability. Try to look for an opening when your teammates CC a target to move forward, which will in turn cause your opponents to move forward as well. As they approach, you should always look to team usage of your ultimate with this ability, since it turns Artemis into a CC immune hunter with an 80% attack speed stim. This of course essentially forgoes the immunity to slows bars that this ability also entails, but that leads me to talking about this ability in the early stages of the match. Of course, the attack speed stim is not only less in percentage, but is almost halved in terms of duration. So realistically, you want to save this almost exclusively for escapes with the movement speed or slow immunity, or for when you 100% are sure you and your support are able to get a kill, typically if you snag someone in a trap. Doing that raw is extremely difficult, but it can be made easier with the use of Artemis' third ability. Artemis rains down arrows in an AoE, this ability being able to be aimed over walls, and every enemy inside the AoE takes damage and is slowed. So as far as wave clear goes, this is as good as it gets for Artemis, and given its weak damage, it's more of a wave suppressant at the end of the day unless your lane opponent lets you stack out the wave first, for some reason. They shouldn't be letting you do that, but it never hurts just to try in order to hit the whole wave, just don't die for it. Speaking of hitting the wave, keep in mind that the slow on this ability will count towards Artemis' passive, so any hit minions affected by the slow with basic attacks for extra damage on the wave if you can. While this ability is of course relegated to boring wave clearing for the most part, it's clearly also a very versatile damaging ability during fights, since it literally can't be blocked or avoided if you hit it straight on. Great for starting off your combos or just for poke, it's something you always want to be looking to use, both while laning and in fights, in a similar manner to your traps. You never want to forget that you have these great zone control tools as Artemis to keep yourself from getting freely dogpiled. But hopefully this goes without saying, never use it to poke instead of on the wave. Artemis has literally no way to clear the wave outside of this ability, not even her ultimate can help with that. Artemis becomes CC immune and calls upon her boar. Her boar will charge at enemy gods within that original AoE in the targeter. If there were no enemies in range of the targeter, the boar will just chill there. But if any enemies come into the range, wha-bam! Gods hit by the boar are damaged as well as stunned, and the boar will charge at any other enemy gods that are within that same starting range of the boar in its new location. So yeah, that's absolutely insane. Hoyu's ultimate gives it a run for its money, but I think it's fair to say that if timed well, this ability is the most impactful hunter ultimate in the game in regards to its impact on the entire fight. But how should you as the Artemis judge the timing and when to use it? Well, clearly, with that stellar CC immunity duration, it's the get out of jail free card in Artemis's kit. So if you ever, and I mean ever, get jumped on, you have to use this ability. It can of course be tricky though. If you're too trigger happy, what some tanks and sometimes assassins will do is engage on you with a blink or what have you, then do nothing. They let you burn this ability, then proceed to walk away or steamroll you from there, having burned your only means of escape and your best enabler for your ridiculous basic attack damage. That's more something to be on the lookout for in a minority of matches. Typically, when you see an assassin or tank moving at you at 77 million miles an hour, it's your chance to pop the ability in retreat by using your second ability and machine gunning down anyone who gets hit by your board. The best use of this ability is clearly as a counter engage. However, it's great as a follow-up engage as well. Sticking within basic attack range of your support is a good way to simplify where you want to position as an ADC, so in turn, keep a close eye on their movement and see when they engage as well. This is your chance to run up and play aggressive if it turned out to be a worthwhile engage. This is typically when your support has snagged either multiple enemies or a single squishy character on the enemy team with CC. Of course, if your support is in Neverland diving in on their own, don't run up carelessly to ult and smack the enemy team down. But again, this is one of the best secondary engage and counter engage tools in the entire game, so your game sense is key with this ability. While laning, the same sort of rules apply in the classic ADC and support 2v2, but once you're left alone in lane, things become a bit different. Usage of this ability in 1v1 is very matchup dependent. For instance, apply a bit of pressure to a Neith, bait her into using her 1 on you, and immune it with the ult while running at her. And you've got her beads as well as a backflip for free, leading to an easy chase down and potential kill depending on where your health bars were when you started. However, you'll never get the chance to do this on say an Apollo or Chernobog who can immune the boar stun, nor someone like an Anhur who can actually use your usage of this boar to completely destroy you by using a CC immune, high damaging ult to not only kill the boar, but immune it and easily all in and kill you. While learning matchups is paramount in any god, Artemis is actually rather simple with matchups. Realistically, you only need to learn how your ultimate interacts with your lane opponent. And other than that, you just play back and farm up for the late game, seeing as you almost never win lane, letting your tanks do the heavy lifting for you and you swiftly follow up with them with 1,000,001 basic attacks. Speaking of which, some simple combos with Artemis. 3-2 basic attacks. 3-1-2 basic attacks. When someone gets trapped, 2 basic attacks, then 3 as soon as they leave the trap, and basic attacks some more. 4, 1, 2, and run them down so you can get in range, and if you know they have beads, always skip placing the trap on them after the boar hits. For ability leveling, you want your 3 at level 1, your 1 at level 2, so you can start placing traps, skip leveling your 2 in favor of your 3 at level 3, then level your 2 at level 4. From there you want to max your 2 and your 3, getting your ultimate at level 5 but skipping leveling it until your 3 and 2 are maxed. Then from there fill out your 1 and your ultimate, prioritizing the ultimate. Artemis, like our friend AMC, lives life in the fast lane. Well, it's more sort of the slow lane since they don't have any movement abilities, but I digress. They're both pretty easy when you get down to their mechanics, Artemis being even simpler in this regard, but holy hell is it hard to just not die in these gods. Luckily, once Artemis hits level 5, she has great self-peel with her ultimate, but boy howdy is it hard to avoid dying before then. Another piece of self-peel is of course the traps, but a ton of junglers have a leap or teleport to get around it, and trust me, any decent jungler is begging you to lay that trap down so they can just avoid it and laugh at you. That said, Artemis isn't nearly as much of a glass cannon as AMC is, even though it's certainly safe to say that she's still risky. There are some enemy team comps, and as I mentioned, direct lane opponents that can ignore all of Artemis' benefits. But against most gods, especially the more explosive gods CC and damage-wise, they get completely thwarted by the usage of her ultimate. And nobody, absolutely nobody is safe if they're anywhere near basic attack range when Artemis activates her too. I mean... So it's safe to say she's worth the risk, unlike some other hypercarry style characters in the game. Try to learn your limitations in the early game so you don't get put too far behind. But never, and I mean never, underestimate your potency in the mid to late game if you've managed to acquire your items and max your second ability. That's about all I have on Artemis for now. Thanks for watching. Her boar will